now we'll be starting with the panel discussion. I would like to invite on stage Wasif, who will be the moderator for the panel discussion. Wasif, who is a solicitor and a very good friend, who is well experienced in financial crime and acquisition and mergers. Wasif, over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And I know that you're enjoying your food, munching it down, but we have a very, very interesting discussion this evening with three incredible journeymen. I'd like to, firstly, if I could get you all to clap for our panel and for this particular award ceremony tonight. It has been an absolutely amazing event. Please, for everyone here tonight. This is a building about innovators. This is a building that has had people such as Isambard Kingdom Brunel, a person who has built bridges, who has built incredible things. And it's also a place where today we are going to be able to introduce some of these gentlemen who are going to be able to tell you how you can build the future. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Wayne Foster. Wayne is with Open Banking and he runs ecosystems at Open Banking. He is the glue and he will tell us exactly what he does as we go on. Mario here on my left, he is with a number of different money-related businesses, but his amazing story, I will let him tell that himself. And finally, we have Dennis at the end, who is going to really take us into the future and let us see what is going to happen in relation to stablecoin and a number of different other ventures where he is taking innovative steps at Clear Junction as their Chief Growth Officer. Please, ladies and gentlemen, clap for this amazing panel. Mario, I'd like to start with you. There's a question. There's always a question when it comes to money service businesses. Is cash dead?
No, cash isn't dead. I think we've reached the bottom and we are now resurging, going back up. It's not a very steep incline at the time, but I was in Sweden earlier this year, and Sweden is famous for being cashless. And it was very cashless when I went there last time. It was very difficult to find any place in Stockholm, any place in Sweden to pay cash. They all turned it down. This year, it was very easy. They were taking our cash everywhere we went, to the museum, and the coffee shops, and the stores, everywhere. And why? Because now they have rules and regulations around the acceptance of cash that the stores have to accept cash again. And why did they introduce this law? Because they had issues, they were breached, they were hacked, and the economy was, well, disturbed, and therefore they need to have something safe to fall back on, and that is cash. You heard about the power outages in Europe, all of the data breaches, all of the problems with banking apps, and you need something to fall back on, and that is cash. Some people have no other way to pay things than with cash. So we've now reached the 9% that you read in the Telegraph today, or in the Times. The 9%, I agree, it's less than 10. We've reached a low point. We're not going to go further down. We've reached the bottom of cash, and it is starting to go up. You can see it go up around in Europe, where other economies, which were cashless first, have now gone away from cashless and are using cash again. We are not there yet in the UK. It still needs to go up here. But what you can already see, if ever you go on a site or an app called TikTok, there's a thing now in Gen Z, it's called cash stuffing. It's a way to budget. So if you want to get through the month with a limited budget, imagine you're young and you have a limited budget, what these people do is they withdraw cash. You remember ATMs, you withdraw cash, And then you put these physical banknotes in an envelope. That's why it's called cash stuffing. You stuff the envelopes. There's one envelope for each thing you want to spend the cash on. There's clothes, there's food, there's entertainment, all kinds of things. And you put the banknotes in these envelopes. And you pay with cash. And if the envelope's empty, too bad. Next month, you can fill it up again. It's a way to budget. It's very popular for Gen Z. So now Gen Z is using cash again. I'm going to add a few other examples of things that have come back. Vinyl is the typical example. There's a lot of vinyl being sold for high prices. Another recent example, you know the Jet 2 holidays? Yes, you all know the song, yes? Mm-hmm. What is that? I used to work for Thomas Cook. Yeah? Package holidays. Package holidays were going to be dead. Well, they're very popular again. And why? Because if you book with Booking or you book with an airline and these things get cancelled, you're not protected. If you're protected when you buy a package holiday, well, that's what you want. So it's a fallback. It's something you know you can rely on. It's not the new thing, but it's something you know.
It's a really interesting point. I think in terms of security, that's always been its strongest point, this kind of idea that it's my money, it's where I am. And I suppose there's things, though, that are coming into play that are now allowing you to have that security outside of just that traditional cash space as well. I'd like to come over to Wayne on this particular point. Wayne, in terms of open banking, how is that working to allow transactions like Mario has been talking about to happen on a more global scale in relation to how anyone can do this now?
With open banking, obviously in the UK, it was launched and the blueprint has been rolled out across many countries globally now. And so we're still very early in that journey. We've had 30 million payments month on month now. We've got 15 million users. And now the blueprint is rolled out across Brazil, Australia. And so what's happening is about confidence, is about trust, and is about knowing what's out there. It's still new. But what happens is I'm a firm believer in that you need lots of channels. So cash is obviously one way for making payments, receiving money, but also with digital currencies, with crypto, with stablecoins. There's lots of ways. So depending on the use case, really drives why people want to use it. So whether it's convenience, it's easy to use. For adoption, it has to be simple. So I think that's the key to anything, is having the right product to solve the right problem, not just for the sake of it. And that's what open banking has been trying to do, is to create innovation or allow fintechs to have the rules to be able to create innovative products that solve problems, that either reduce costs, give you additional insights to where you're spending money, and where you can obviously optimize operational back-end processes by using either transactional information and also obviously making payments globally at a lower fee. But with all things, it does come down to awareness as well. And the only way to do that is obviously events like this, good coverage, and also get the stories out there. OBL that I work for, we've created the standard and we run the ecosystem, but we're silent. The actual innovation and the magic happens by all of you guys in the room. You're the people that actually make use cases and obviously change people's lives. That's the story that we need to get out there. So hopefully that gives a little bit of, insight, from an open banking point of view.
I'd like to come over to Dennis as well on this particular point now, because you really are at the forefront now in relation to understanding what stablecoin is about and understanding these new innovations. Tell us a little bit about stablecoin itself, but also tell us a little bit about your business and what you're doing within that space and why you think it's so important.
Absolutely. Well, first, it's absolute pleasure and honor to be here. You know, I'm, like many immigrants living in London, been using remittance services for many, many years, supporting my family. So I want to take this opportunity and to thank you all for your excellent services. And because of you, many families back home, no matter where they are, you know, having a better life. So thank you and kudos to the super important industry. We in Clear Junction trying to make world better connected. And true to our licensing, we were one of the first UK company who built dual license and got EMI as well as digital asset provider licenses from the FCA. And this combination of two licenses allowed us, one of the first company, to build interconnected products specifically for remittance companies. Right now, we do understand that for many remittance companies, it's very hard to use the last leg of payout specifically for the hard-to-reach regions or unbankable. So we build our own chain solution that, allowing these regions and these customers finally to be enriched. And the entire purpose of these transactions, first, if you think about that, it's 365, 24/7, and it's instant. The cost of these transactions are usually 90% cheaper, give or take, versus the average SWIFT. And the most important, it's helping world to get interconnected. This is pretty much our mission.
It is a really interesting space. I mean, one of the things that we want to also look at is how the government and states are interacting with those processes and those procedures. I'm going to go back. So I'm going to start with you, Dennis, and work our way back. So I'd like to know, what more can the government do to help and assist in relation to what you do as a business? And this is a question to all three of you. And what more do you think is going to happen in this space?
Actually, with the US passing Genius Act, what it was back in July, and FCA and CFA are now starting to work on the working committee. First time ever, stablecoins are no longer part of the shady business and associated with the wrongdoing. There is a very clear regulatory framework between both countries, UK and US. UK specifically stated, and the FCA stated, that we are moving to multi-currency universe, meaning that stablecoin transaction will be equal to any other currency transactions, and this would be the future for the UK and the US/Canada market. So Canadian regulator is a little bit behind, but it's kind of following the rules.
Everyone's catching up.
Well, yes, absolutely. Well, yeah. But as you know, right, eventually Canada is always adopting the way how US working with the market. European Union, although, taking a completely different approach, and right now, as MiCA is the main regulatory framework specifically for design for the digital assets. Right now, there is a conversation, is the MiCA even fit for purpose? Simply because it's extremely restrictive, and, so there is a conversations right now happening that the MiCA is no longer serving purpose and stopping the innovation rather than enhancing the innovation in the sector.
Indeed. Wayne, same question to you. What can the government do more, and where do you see your business extending in the next 12 months to 5 years?
Yeah, so if we kind of just step back a little bit and look what the UK's actually done from a regulatory perspective, the Competition and Market Authority obviously created a mandate for OBL, who I work for, which was originally the Open Banking Implementation Entity, to build the ecosystems, to create the standard which has created the innovation that we have today. Without that mandate, it wouldn't happen. We had to obviously get the CMA 9 banks, which are the 9 largest banks in the UK, which equate to 90% of current accounts, to get them around the table. And they had to, obviously probably not so keen, but to open up their data endpoints, to share account information. So suddenly the data that was held on, say, my current account became my property. And if I wanted to share it with a technology company to get better products, choice, save money, whatever the solution is, it was my ability to be able to give that permission to a regulated entity. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the regulators. And so that was the catalyst, not just for the UK, but also across Europe. Obviously, before Brexit took place, we were part of one bloc, and so Open Banking, OBIE at the time, it facilitated that across Europe. Obviously, we've taken a step back in some ways because we're now the UK, but we're still pushing on. Europe is got PSD2 and PSD3 coming soon. From a UK position, we've managed to, OBL convene and probably get the meaty and the challenging questions and debate them and try and solutionize, so we end up with a position where it's fair, it's balanced, but ultimately we want good use cases for choices for end users. And so we've just had the Data User Access Act passed, which will facilitate smart data, open finance, other initiatives, which is a really important landmark for the UK. And so we now need the second legislation, which will come through to allow those initiatives to start. What do we need from the regulators? Obviously, it's the biggest question. We still need mandatory drivers. When things are optional, they tend to move slower and they may not actually be consistent. So if we can get more mandatory requirements to make people to level up, which there's something called a long-term regulatory framework, which is the next step, which will create funding for open banking so the CMA order can be rescinded, and then is an equitable stake across all players in the ecosystem. So you probably all know, if you don't invest or you stand still, you're going backwards. So we need everyone to have skin in the game to pay for open banking and beyond, so the innovation keeps coming, everybody can earn a commercial revenue from it, which will then obviously open up new markets, new investments, and suddenly the game changes. And that's the magic moment we need. So the long-term regulatory framework is what I really want to see happen, and obviously some regulatory mandation where needed. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, you're going to put me out of the job. There were so many bits of legislation there that I don't think, I was kind of trying to keep up there. Amazing.
Apologies.
Mario, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I can say what the other two said. Yeah, but no, we're helping to combat money laundering and terrorist financing. And doing that, we should feel supported by the government. And there's a number of obstacles for us, money service businesses, that I think the government should help us identify and help to clear them. So of course there's the big issue is the access to banking. It's been named in the last meeting of the MSB Association. It's still there, so we should address it. Because if they close your bank account, it's very difficult to keep running your business. Another thing is the access the data we have to get from our customers, the IDs, the proof of source of income.
What do you think of this new digital ID, or this digital ID that the government's announced recently? Do you think that will help you?
It may, but then again, we hold a lot of very personal information from these people, and you're at risk of a data breach. Yeah. So if you would have something like a zero KYC, where basically you have a third party, you don't see the ID. Yeah. They send it to a third party, which is ring-fenced, and they will tell you, yes, this person is not on a sanctioned list, is not a PEP. We've done a few other checks, all is good, and you haven't seen the actual ID. You don't hold this in your own data. Yeah, that would help us as well.
You know, I'm going to go across again, so I'm going to start with you this time, Mario. But I actually want you to tell me a little bit more, and I think I want everyone to actually understand a little bit more about your business, because you told me the story of the plane, and I want you to tell everyone the story of the plane and how, you can have so much money going through because there is so much still out there in terms of what you do as a business.
Yes. So you may not realize, but pretty much on every flight where you're on and they're coming around with that donation bag, that coin you put in that bag is going to come to us. We get these bags. There's tons and tons of them, every week. There are currencies mixed together. We have to sort them out and then repatriate them back to the countries of origin. So they go back on a plane or on a boat. We send a container of coins back to the United States. In a container, I can tell you, there's 10 million coins. Wow. That's a lot of coins. And they go back in circulation in the United States. So it's full circle.
It's like, you know what, I'm just imagining a director or something coming there and saying, right, how do you make a movie out of this? This is like, we've got, KYC, everything else is just there. It's just right for us to kind of make a movie out of this and, Mario, you're a star. You're going to be a star next, I'm telling you.
Thank you.
How you defend it. But I suppose that's one of the things. I want to come back to security as well, because it is a very important point. How do we ensure that the security of what we're doing is not going to difficult regimes, difficult organizations, people? How do we continue to protect against those things, Mario, in your business?
We do the sanctions and the PEP checks, yeah. Regardless, if it's a charitable transaction or not, we need to make sure that we understand the reason why this transaction is taking place, who's going to be the ultimate beneficiary. Yeah.
And I suppose what I'm coming to here is now the understanding of AI, because I want to know how you as a business, as you go along, will interact with AI. So how does that affect your business in terms of what do you see AI being as a tool for your business?
We use it for two things. One is content creation. So AI can help you, create a big amount of content. If you're selling currencies like we do with ManorFX for over 150 currencies, and you need to create a page about each currency in each destination, AI is a great tool there. But on the other side, AI is also used by fraudsters. So we all need to be, in the training we get, your AML training you get every year, there needs to be a section about AI, because the fraudsters are getting better. And often, it's not a person that is trying to defraud you, it's an AI. Yeah? And I think that we need to be more trained there.
Very true. If I could ask the same question of Wayne. I suppose it's this hybrid future that we're looking at. How do we ensure that this hybrid future is assured? Because one of the things that I found as a lawyer, for example, is when I look at a regulator, they look at things, here's the product, and they'll look at it very closely, and they don't necessarily have an ability to kind of pan out in the way that we want them to pan out, to be able to see other things that are going on elsewhere in the world as well. How do you believe that AI could affect our future?
I'm not a lawyer, so you're not going to get a legal view. If you actually think about the way tech is now, and the world is a much smaller place, collaboration is key. I think there's lots of data points that firm A will have their SOC that has loads of data and lots of triggers and alerts and things. And they learn from that. And they improve and they close down threats, whether it's fraud, whether it's cyber attacks, etc. And then you've got Bank B over here doing the same thing. Collaboration of all those datas and the potential that I alluded to with smart data, cross-pollination across different ecosystems will reduce threat vectors across those industries. So I think the sum of all parts will really come together. But obviously that's easy on stage to say that, to bring all those different industries across different sectors, across different regions and countries. That's going to be a lot of work, but it's definitely possible and it will happen. I think it will, because you can see what's going on right now in the world with obviously ransomware and businesses potentially on the brink of bankruptcy. Big organizations, they can't weather the storm. And so something has to change. And the only way to do that is to work together and probably some regulatory intervention and some new frameworks and some obviously super smart people. Over to you.
Yeah.
So we as a company are processing around 50 billion euro transactions annually, and therefore we're using this data to train our system to process transactions. So payment screening, transaction monitoring is the most useful right now AI where it could be used. That's allowed us to speed up so the lower the percentage of transaction that must be manually checked and controlled and monitored, which is absolutely amazing. But at this stage, to be perfectly frank, I'm not even going to the toilet without ChatGPT. So, I think this is where the future heads, right? Eventually, I always say please and thank you on any ChatGPT, just in case, right here.
Excellent. I suppose one of the things that is also coming out of this is we've talked about cybersecurity, we've talked about even AI. I suppose it's about what the benefits are now of how you see big banks losing that space. Because big banks, do you think that they're going to lose that space more with regards to the innovation and the people in this room? Or do you think that there's going to be a balance?
Look, we cannot ignore, water will find a way, right? We are working with the remittance sector, right? So it always will be the cases that family need to be supported. It doesn't really matter if it's sanctioned in your jurisdiction or not, right? So it's up to, right now to for the big banks to pick up a pace and to start to work with these regions. At this stage, there are pros and cons, right? I've been speaking with many head of compliance and specifically focusing on correspondent account, which is showing the kind of the risk map that looks just utterly ridiculous. Seeing that EU and US is okay and everything else is not okay. And who on earth would you use tier 1 bank for correspondent account if this is your limitations nowadays? On another side, there are positive development. For example, I know that several big banks in Europe are now starting to launch the European, the digital euro, right? There are consortium of banks, hopefully launching that by end of 2026. So there is pros and cons. And at this stage, I think, we all and big banks need to be better educated. Otherwise, they're going to lose the market, and would be delighted to pick that up.
Everyone here is, I think, ready to pick up the pieces on those things. But Wayne, in your understanding, how is the relationship between MSPs, people in this room, and banks? How do you think that that's going to develop over time in relation to the technology that you have seen come out and develop over the few years?
Like all things, when there's a need and demand, people will gravitate to find solutions. The technology now allows for seamless transfer of money, potentially. Obviously, it needs technology packages to solve and unpick the challenges. But you'll see, just from an open banking perspective, banks were just purely providing their data, so opening their endpoints up, and money was being moved out of their bank to, say, another bank. That's changing. All those banks have got invested in people, in their technology, and also into open banking as a core department within their own banks now. So they've got their own TPP arm, which is a third-party provider. So they've got their own arm that, for like NatWest, Pingit, and others. They've all got their own interests, because they've realised if they don't get involved and they don't actually move with the times, they'll be caught napping and they will lose market, they will lose potentially huge revenues. And also what comes with all this is skills and keeping people interested in the organisation as well. They don't want to be in an organisation that's stagnant. And so they want to be, obviously we've got young people coming out of university, they've got skills and want to get into this industry. And so they're going to go to the banks that are forward thinking. And so I think you see in a lot of TPPs either being consolidated or consumed by the large banks, which tells you a story, or they're investing in their own innovation arms and have got think tanks, and they're out there working hard to build solutions for open banking, which will naturally feed into many of you in this room. Somebody already came up to me today about a problem, could it solve it? And so, yes, the answer's in the room, and obviously you're going to see me after, and I'll make sure that the right people can help you. But hopefully, again, open banking is still very early, but it is the catalyst for many things that, for moving money more seamless, and data will also play a key part.
A similar question to you, Mario, in terms of, I think with your business as well, because it's so unique in terms of what it does, money that is effectively in people's pocket is being transferred across and being recycled effectively. One of the things that I would like you to answer is how you think customers would react as well to a digital, well, let's just say it's a digital pound, a digital stablecoin pound. If customers were to be given that as a concept, that as something that is now in their wallet, oh, I'm going to pay by my digital stablecoin pound, how do you think that affects your business?
I think it'd be amazing, because do you know how heavy coins are? They're heavy, I can tell you, and they're bulky. So if you can transform those heavy, bulky coins and notes into those digital things, that'd be amazing. Now the thing is, there's never been more coins and notes in circulation than now. When I say in circulation, they don't really circulate. They're mostly stuck in your drawers, yeah, under your pillows. Yeah? But there's a lot of money out there. It's just not being used. But at some point, it needs to come back. And the branches have closed. You know, the post offices have closed. So who's going to take it? The Metro Bank no longer takes coins. But they're out there. And if you want to transform them into digital, please go ahead. And we'll do that.
The only problem,
someone has to do the work.
The only problem that you're going to have is no one's going to be able to get a trolley at Tesco. Come on.
Speaking about trolleys, so we collect from airports, and we have a trolley. Now, I went with that trolley to Westminster Abbey to collect after the coronation all the donations, and they have cobblestones. It doesn't work with a trolley.
I bet. I suppose another question to you, Mario, exactly that. I mean, that concept, because that's really the idea, is it not? The idea that you would have the digital pound stablecoin. Wayne, how do you think that is going to land for the public? That's for Wayne.
It comes to trust again and familiarisation. If you look at contactless, when that happened, it took 10 years for it to actually become kind of normal and accepted. Obviously, COVID also expedited the sort of digital transition as well. So there's events that can change it. But the time to get adoption and trust is shortened every single sort of year because of technology, because of the generation, my children, they don't know what cash is. And so they behave differently. And I think the ability around trust and convenience, that changes depending on what you're buying. When I go around and I go into, say, get some food for lunch and I go to a market stall, I'm not doing KYC, I'm not sort of weighing up whether I'm going to be sort of robbed of any money. I dab my card, I trust it, the money goes through, I eat my food, and hopefully they're there next week when I go back. I'm not weighing up trust, it's convenience. It's really easy for me to do, frictionless, boom. But if I'm going to buy something else, like on holiday, I may choose a different channel. So, and then the journey changes. So I think it's all around about horses for courses. And so for me, I think you have all of these channels will work in harmony alongside one another. And depending on what you're doing, it depends on what is the best mechanism for you. But the time to adoption is so short now. I think with obviously smartphones, technology everywhere, obviously Wi-Fi everywhere you go, you can just pay seamlessly. And so the technology is there for it. So to the final point really is, we're going to get to a point where stablecoins, I think, will be commonplace and we will be using them like we do to move cash today. And open banking is part of that journey because obviously it's based on APIs and cryptography and all of that, so it's enabling. But it will grow, it will be massive. And so 5 years from now, it will be mainstream, I think, without that.
Same question to you.
Absolutely. UK is clearly stated that we are moving to multi-currency universe, and so adoption of the stablecoins will be one of the key. There are several working groups within FCA right now. The government is very close in launching that. It will be fully compliant with the Genius Act, so that means UK digital pound will be used in the US and vice versa. So protecting just our national security. So that will be one of the, and definitely in this case, UK is very ahead of digital era, which is amazing. So that's potential to bring pound back to the glory that it used to be in a long way. So it's a catching game, right? So it's great to see that UK is definitely on the top of that.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to some questions and answers now. I think we've got some time to do that. So. First of all, thank you everybody for your contributions today. They have been absolutely amazing, really insightful. I would like to give you another round of applause if that's okay. It's well deserved. And can I also, because you've mentioned it, and I think it's right to do so, I'd like to give the migrants a round of applause as well, because you know what? They have been the basis upon which we make these businesses, and they are very, very important to us. So thank you to them as well. But let's open up the floor to questions. Are there any questions from anyone?
Hi, Theo from Trust Payments. I'm a big proponent on the steady adoption of stablecoins and the utility that they can provide to move money across border, particularly to developing or unbanked countries. Do you see CBDCs being a fundamental threat to the freedom that stablecoins provide this industry for this particular utility?
That's a great question. Do you want to take that, Dennis?
That's a very good question. It depends on the regulator. In European Union, definitely for sure, right? So in UK and US and Canada, the market is open, and CBDC will be just one of many channels that could be utilized.
Yeah. Does that answer the question? Are there any other questions in the room today?
Yes, good evening. It's really a question regarding the online banking or open banking. I mean, how much can we trust, or how much safe we feel when your money is in online banks? Especially not talking about small amount of money, large money, or when you get large transfers. So, I mean, my experience so far, I don't really feel safe. I'm not sure if this is shared by other people or it's only me, because I had bad experience. Thank you.
My dad still pays by check. He will not do online banking. He's probably in the same school as yourself. With open banking, it's regulators providers, so you can't just become a fintech and start moving money or get access to people's data. They're regulated by the National Competent Authority of that country, so obviously it's the FCA in the UK. So they have to go through a lot of checks before they're even allowed to go into production, first and foremost. Also, the money moves between Bank A and Bank B. They initiate the payment. The funds don't actually go through the flow of their technology. It moves from bank to bank using the faster payment rails. So again, the risk is no more than moving money through your, say, online channel, logging into your bank and then moving money from Bank A to Bank B. It's just more seamless. It also reduces fraud, believe it or not, because most of the payments are pre-populated, immutable. You also go through something called a strong customer authentication, which you do your facial recognition or a thumbprint for every payment. So again, rather than having a card on file, it's less likely to be abused or subject to fraud. So there's lots of benefits from using a technology like open banking to actually reduce that risk. But unless you put your money underneath your mattress, there's always a risk in any institution where you put your money. But obviously it's backed by insurance, so obviously there's schemes out there. So the risk is very, very minimal. And I shouldn't say it, but we've had no breaches through open banking. So yes, there's social engineering, and there's people that will believe that they're paying somebody and they've been hooked into doing something. But that's not a breach of the open banking payment rails. And that can happen out on the street. Someone gets you to hand over £10 because you thought it was for a good cause and it turned out it wasn't. So that's always going to be there. And that's a really big problem that needs to be faced up to, is the social media and the social engineering side of things. But from an open banking perspective, it is secure. It's encrypted end to end. So we're in a good place. But you can never rest on your laurels. You must always make sure that the people you bring into the ecosystem are obviously fit for purpose, and you make sure that you do your due diligence. And the regulators are obviously, that is their role to do that. And if we get anyone who lose their permissions, they get revoked. So we constantly are checking the NCA to make sure anywhere that someone is on our directory, if they lose their permissions, they get revoked. So the ecosystem stays safe.
Okay, are there any other questions in the room?
If you can give me your card details and bank details, we can try that out, see how it goes.
Well, maybe you're right in general when for normal banking, but when you compare sometimes the procedures in online bankings compared to high street banks, I mean, with high street banks, if they have problem with certain issues for compliance, they come and ask you, and they see what's the problem. Online banks, they just freeze your account until 3-4 months until they are satisfied, which is different approach. I had this experience with metro banks. A friend of mine had that experience with one of the online banking. Just they freeze the account and say they start investigate. Okay, investigate, but why you freeze my money? You cannot use your account for 4 or 5 months and they don't tell you why. That's, I mean, so it's really just comparing the relationship between your high street banks and the online banks. That's from my concern.
Yeah, and I don't have any magic wand there. Obviously, the sort of role that we play isn't the online banking side. It is separate, and we provide the trust frameworks. But those issues are obviously what banks are tested on. Day-to-day challenges and processes, and different banks obviously have different ways to manage complaints, issues, etc. And it's personal, isn't it? If you might have had a great experience and someone else may not have. So it's a valid point. Not something I can fix home, I'm afraid.
Indeed.
If I may add to that, so actually it doesn't really matter, open banking, digital bank, etc. All of them working specifically in UK, all of them working exactly on the same framework with the suspension of frauds, etc. And all of them must follow the same procedures. So I'm very sorry about your experience, but I can reassure you that it's nothing to do with the neo tax. It's a standard procedure, and if you would be with the NatWest, the only difference probably, yes, you can go to cashier and express your anger, but the result will be exactly the same.
Indeed. Well, we've come to the end of our discussion, which has been really, really interesting, really enlightening. So thank you once again for all of your contributions. I must say, I did notice up there that we had QR codes and how QR codes are going to be used. Now, to be honest with you, new technology is always taking off, and it always happens on a Saturday night on Strictly Come Dancing. So basically, Strictly Come Dancing tomorrow will have its QR codes. Make sure you know how to use them there. And I'm sure that will then translate to how you will use them everywhere else, because it came from here. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panel. Please, a round of applause once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Asif. Thank you, the panelists. It was really nice to hear all your thoughts.